10 chapters in the conversational guide, and the chapters consist of these components. The story unfolds, the story behind the story, tensions in the story, continuing the storyline, and for the next group meeting. And so, again, the leader's guide for each chapter, that needs to become your friend, because that's going to help you in navigating people through the conversational guide. So the thing I wanted to say about this before we jump into this is that you want to know where you're going when you're leading the group time, okay? You want to have a roadmap. And these different components I just read to you, that's your roadmap. And your leader's guide for each session will help you on the journey, okay? You want to know where you're going, and so the story unfolds. It's basically it's a brief narrative of the overall concept of the chapter, okay? So we're going to go over chapter 1 with you today, and the overall concept is the story of God and finding your place in the story. That's the concept we'll look at tonight in this training. The story behind the story is the one passage from the Bible, the scripture, that you'll take a look at. The tensions in the story are questions that create a little bit of tension. And the thing I want to say about that is that you're going to grow as a facilitator, as a leader, in that it's on purpose that we're creating a little tension in starting point. There should be a little tension. And so tensions in the story is on purpose, and there will be a question asked in that portion of this conversation guide that could create a little tension. It goes back to the question that Mindy asked a while ago. It's when you're really on your feet, ready to facilitate and to guide through the journey. Then the last part is continuing the story. And this section provides additional scriptures that you can use as you're navigating through this chapter. It also gives suggestions for art, for movies, for paintings, for different things that people can look at in culture that really parallels well with the chapter that you're going through. The storyline is the brief section that presents the bottom line of each chapter. So I'm on page 4 now, these leader notes. The storyline is basically after you're going through this group experience on a particular evening or morning, whenever you're facilitating, and the storyline is the bottom line. And in each chapter, there are 2 bottom lines that are highlighted, and we'll look at those tonight. It's again, from a Christian perspective, going, okay, we've talked about this, we've looked at this scripture, there's been a lot of good conversation and interaction and questions. Here's the bottom line from a Christian perspective. And so it's very clear when you leave starting point that morning or that evening what the bottom line is. And everyone's clear on that, okay?
It's good when you're studying, when you're preparing, to go to that and then prepare, because then you kind of solidifies what I'm preparing for. Okay, what is the storyline? It's at the end, of your chapter, and it'll give you the 2 bullet points or whatever. It's kind of good for me. I'll look at those and go, okay, these are the 2 things that I'm emphasizing, and then I'll go back and study to prepare, and kind of keep that in the back of my mind. Helps.
Good. So, and then for the next group meeting, is basically they recommend that you have people read that portion in your conversation guide, but it's basically what people need to do to prepare for the next meeting, okay? Let's go to page 5 of our leader guide. The next thing is the gap philosophy. And you may be wondering, well, what in the world is that? Basically, the conversation guide will lead people up to key concepts about Christianity, okay? And when it leads people up to that, there's going to be a natural gap in the meeting where people are going to ask questions. And again, this is an important time to be listening. it's not anything we need to be fearful of or defensive about, but we have to look at it as facilitators as opportunity to really listen as to where people are coming from. Where are they at in this spiritual journey? And it will come out. They will share with you where they're coming from. And that's where you have the opportunity as a facilitator to guide the conversation at that time. So you'll notice when you're leading that there will be, you'll be presenting a scripture and a thought and then a question, and then there's this gap philosophy, so to speak, where people are going to have questions, they're going to comment, and that's where we as the leaders have to be listening and really be in tune with what's going on in the group at that time to help facilitate and guide. And the cool thing is the way that Mindy has it set up is that it's not just one facilitator doing this. I've always enjoyed having other facilitators that are helping in this process, in this journey, and that I'm not just the only person commenting or answering questions, that there are other facilitators helping. So it's a team effort in really listening to where people are at and being helpful in those situations. And the thing that's really important is that starting point is not a lecture, okay? And you're not even a teacher, you're a facilitator. And it's a group and it's a conversation environment. And you're just guiding people along that journey. So take a look at that, read the gap philosophy more on your own. As far as page 6 and leading the group meetings, I've talked already about the importance of listening, also the importance of asking good questions. And you can see some suggestions on that on page 6. But again, you have to have your roadmap as to where you're going. The thing that I want to be really clear on is you can't ask every question in a particular chapter. Okay? You're going to have to decide ahead of time, which question am I going to ask, okay, in a certain section, because you'll be there all night if you're trying to ask every question. So you need to decide ahead of time, hey, this is the question that I'm going to ask, and just being prepared ahead of time is important like that. So when we lead you through chapter 1, we haven't just come in here with chapter 1 going, I wonder what questions we're going to ask you guys, because we're going to do that in just a moment. We know what question we're going to ask you ahead of time, so that we're ready to go and ready to navigate that way. Sharing stories, we started off that way tonight. And basically the reasons why we share stories, go to page 7 at the top, and it spells it out for you. It's a conversational environment. Deep down, people want to be known, and for others to know them and to know others. It creates authentic community. It helps group members become participants, and sharing our stories causes us to reflect on God's presence within them. So how to share stories, I've already reviewed that. You can read that paragraph if you would like, but I would just recommend making sure it's 7 minutes. And as a suggestion, have them look at the 4 defining moments in their life. You may get somebody who will say, hey, you know what, I just want to bring a picture that really kind of describes my life, and go, hey, that's fine if you want to do that, as long as it's 7 minutes. But I wanted to give you guys something that you could take with you that you could use in that setting. If you choose not to do the 4 defining moments, that's cool, that's your call. But I think it's a good way for you to model how to share your story in 7 minutes, and it's helpful to people, because when you say, hey, share your story, that's kind of a wide open thing, like, what are you talking about? Share my story. Well, we need to model for them how to do that.
Defining moments, and then have them end with what brought you here to this point, where, why am I starting point now? Is there you starting point?
Is that question exactly, does that question have the same relevance for women's Bible study when women are used to coming to Bible study and this is the next course, as it would for just signing up for a starting point?
It might be more of just like share your defining moments. Like if we don't know each other that well, or and not everyone has to share. If you want to share next week, maybe your defining moments, or maybe not what brought you to starting point, because they're not just coming to starting point. Like
for that very reason.
So no, that little tag doesn't apply really necessarily.
Although at your table, except
people.
at your table, if they are only people who are really, so you have to kind of use your judgment on that.
Customize.
Cool. So the next part in this orientation is just in between the group meetings, and real simply, you do need to communicate with those you're facilitating with. And so I remember when we first started, Maggie, Russ Dunaway and Steve Diekman, and we were just getting this thing going. We would have to communicate ahead of time, like, hey, who's doing what in each chapter, and we would communicate with each other just to be clear on that. And I think that will be helpful as you facilitate, communicating as facilitators, like,